I'm Rachel Johnson, co host of the EduGals podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. I am excited to be here with you on this wonderful Wednesday. It is midweek, and it's almost Friday, guys. As educators, we know that once we get to that midweek point, it's all downhill there into the weekend, and I'm definitely excited about that. And I'm definitely excited to be here with you all this evening as well. And first of all, before we dive into this amazing show, as always, I want to thank each and every single one of you for your support. On Monday, My EdTech Life turned 3 years old, and it has been just an amazing ride of connecting educators and creators one show at a time. Thank you so much for all the support, the shares, the follows, and all the, podcast birthday messages. So thank you as always. And again, from the bottom of my heart, we definitely do this so we can bring you the best of the best and making sure that we add some amazing conversations to our education space. And today, for sure, is definitely going to be a great topic of conversation, as I have an amazing guest, Alex Cotran, who is joining us today. And today we're going to be talking about AI education for the next generation. And I'm really excited for you all in the education space who may not be familiar with Alex's work and what he's doing through AI EDU. Like, today is definitely the show to be here with us. And of course, this is definitely going to be the show to listen to. So without further ado, Alex Cotran, how are you this evening?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm in San Francisco, so it's not quite evening yet. It's actually surprisingly sunny and balmy outside. But yeah, no, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. I really appreciate it. I know, the show was scheduled for a different date, but I know that you are definitely very busy, and I definitely am excited to hear about your work and what it is that you're doing. So, before we dive into the conversation with some questions and so on, Alex, can you give our audience members who may not be familiar with who you are and the work that you do yet, can you please give us a little brief introduction and then your context in the AI EDU space?
Yeah, so I'm co-founder and CEO of a nonprofit called the AI Education Project, and our mission is to empower learners everywhere with the knowledge they need to thrive in the age of artificial intelligence. And we really think about thriving, not just as future workers, that's important, but also as future citizens, consumers, and creators. And so we build free curriculum for schools, especially in K-12, that help teachers bring exploration about AI into the classroom. And we also focus a lot on capacity building among educators, so teacher training and professional development and presentations. And then finally, our nonprofit is really focused on building a platform and a movement for the vibrant ecosystem of other nonprofits, universities, school districts, educational service agencies, who are all doing their own work to advance AI education. And we believe that no one organization can solve this problem alone, because it's such a big imperative for us, and it's also really time sensitive. And so we're always thinking about how can we leverage partnerships and connect with audiences like yours to just sort of like raise the flag.
Exactly. And I did get to know who you were through another podcast that you were on also as well. So I'm really excited about what I heard there. And then of course I said, you know what, I want to make sure that we share this with my audience as well. I think it was with Daniel Lopez that you did that podcast with. So, and Daniel will actually be on the show here next week. I believe it's either Monday or Tuesday, so we can talk about his podcast. And of course, AI, and as this is something that is very popular right now. This is something that is a huge topic that is important for everybody, not only in the education space, but in industry, workforce, and everything that can really change and, shape the way we learn in a very, just drastic way. But I wanted to ask you now, diving into what you're doing with, your project and your nonprofit that you're doing. Tell us a little bit more how you got the idea to start, AIEDU.org and the inspiration behind it.
Yeah, I have a really meandering path. My background is not in artificial intelligence or frankly in education. My background is in politics. So I was working, grew up in Ohio. Parents are both immigrants and they're both educators. So that's my connection to the education world initially. And so I was working in the Obama administration in DC. And after the administration ended, I moved to San Francisco with many of my colleagues. And, because in DC at the time, this is 2016, there was sort of this just realization that like technology is going to rule the future. And at the time, people were talking about big data, but there was a sense of there's a lot more that's going to be happening. And so I kind of wanted to just be, in the center of it. And so I was in San Francisco. I was working with companies like Oracle and Airbnb. And I started volunteering for a nonprofit called the Future Society. And so this was a think tank that spun out of the Harvard Kennedy School. And they were thinking about governance. So how do you develop best practices, standards, and actual governance around AI at the international multilateral level? And so as part of my work with them, I was attending, a lot of the big conferences and roundtables and gatherings where you had all of the sort of people that were paying attention to artificial intelligence. This is like 2017, 2018. And one of the things that I noticed very quickly, very early on, is that it was sort of the same usual suspects. Whether the conference was in San Francisco or London or Dubai, it was, the same folks from Stanford and MIT and from, top universities that were sort of at the vanguard of the research, and economists and civil society organizations that were really focused on this. But the conversation was a lot broader. The conversation would often go something like AI is the new electricity. It's going to displace millions of people. We need to take action to make sure that people aren't left behind by this transformative, the fourth industrial revolution, as the World Economic Forum put it. And so I was kind of I chat with my mom, a couple times a week, and I was debriefing with her. She asked me what I was doing. And I was like, oh, I was at this conference, and I shared some of the stuff that I'd learned. And one of them was actually that Akron, Ohio, where I grew up, where my mom teaches, is on the list of cities in the U.S. that's most at risk for automation-driven job displacement. And so we're talking about artificial intelligence, and my mom sort of commented offhand, like, "Oh, this seems so relevant to my kids. I wish that we were teaching them about AI." And I was kind of like, "But what do you mean? Like, certainly, schools are talking to students about this. I mean, in the circles that I'm in, it's the future of work. I mean, this is really perhaps the most important people, the people that have the most important decisions to make based on this information are actually kids in high school who are trying to decide what career pathway do I choose, and they're also, frankly, the most prolific users of tools like TikTok and Instagram, which heavily rely on artificial intelligence to determine what content students see. And then so we started digging. We started, I couldn't get it out of my head, and so one of my early board members helped me raise a little bit of money, and we partnered with Georgetown and did a landscape analysis to understand where are people learning about artificial intelligence in the U.S., like outside of the research universities and the think tanks. And when we looked at K-12, first of all, it wasn't zero. There were actually a lot of pioneering educators who had built essentially their own curriculum from scratch. And like Blakely Payne out of MIT is a great example, piloting middle school curriculum. But in most cases, it was really isolated. It was sort of one-off. It was like one school was piloting something, or one teacher was building a program, or there was an after-school summer camp. What we didn't find were sort of standards that would make it easy for any teacher to integrate. And what we also found is that there was a heavy bias, understandably, towards computer science. So the classes and the teachers that were really at the forefront of this were computer science teachers and computer science classes and computer science summer camps and after-school programs. And that's a problem, because if we think about the digital equity gap or the tech equity gap, one of the drivers is that there is just a really big lack of access to computer science in the schools and the communities that are frankly stand to be the hardest hit by this disruption. And so by way of example, Akron Public Schools, where my mom teaches, has one computer science teacher for 20,000 students. So that teacher's busy. Like, the idea that that teacher is now also going to start being the primary channel for delivering AI education, it's not fair to the teacher, and it's also not fair to districts that really have been struggling to find and keep computer science teachers. And so we then spent the next 3 years doing R&D and really thinking about, can we build conceptual curriculum that engages students in some of the key learnings that you need in order to thrive as a citizen and as a worker, without necessarily getting them to be engineers and building the actual models. And so we built project-based learning activities and curricula for core subjects like English, science, math, social studies. We built stuff for computer science as well, mostly for like introduction to computer science and AP Computer Science A, and career technology education. And what that looks like is, like an English teacher leading a debate about the use of language models like ChatGPT in journalism, or a US history class asking students to come up with, what would go in your AI Bill of Rights. The White House put their own up, but like what rights do you think are most important? And so these are accessible conversations. You don't actually need to know how to build a model or even how ChatGPT works to have an opinion about whether we should be relying on ChatGPT, for example, in the field of journalism. And so there's many other examples like that. I could keep going, but so we were able to build the curriculum. We piloted it in Title I schools that were, we felt were the least likely to get access to this type of education otherwise. And it worked, and the teachers loved it because it was easy to use and essentially worked out of the box without professional development needed. The teachers serve as facilitators on the learning journey, but they're not the subject matter experts. They're not expected to be able to answer all the questions about artificial intelligence. So that approach clearly started what was working, and then what happened sort of in concurrent with that was we were having conversations with district leaders, so superintendents, administrators, principals, and we were also finding that, contrary to what we had been warned, which is administrators are too busy. This was like post-COVID. There's just like so much stuff that they're grappling with. AI is not going to be on their radar. But in reality, I think this is actually really front and center for a lot of education leaders, because many of them were looking around the corner and thinking, we need a strategy for our students to make sure that we're even rethinking what do 21st century skills mean? What are 21st century jobs? Because we've been using that phrase since really the year 2000, but we now have the benefit of 23 years of technology development. So even those conversations, I think there was a recognition that I needed to shift. And so we really built this network, like an ecosystem of teachers and leaders who were sort of paying attention. And then ChatGPT happened. And so that really flipped the script for us, because it shifted us from being in a place where we were spending a lot of our time trying to convince people about how important AI education is, to responding to a deluge of demand from schools where they're like, we see it, we get it. This is a game changer. How can you help us? What can we do? What should we do? And so that's what we're doing now. And we've been fortunate to raise a lot of money from, private and corporate philanthropy to sort of scale that capacity. And it really looks like more teacher training, more curriculum, and just more engagement overall.
That's great. And everything that you hit on is just, I love the story and the buildup to everything that you're doing. And of course, like you said, ChatGPT came out, and then of course, more people now are, how are we going to handle this? How are we going to have these conversations? How are we going to allow students to use it? Are we not going to allow students to use it? Are we just going to block it altogether? Is it just for teachers and so on? So there's so many conversations being had all around, and many people are using it in many unique ways. And I did have a guest here on Saturday, Stefan Bouchard, and one of the things he mentioned, because he was talking to teachers from other countries, they're saying there's a demand for teachers, and there aren't that many, so they're using ChatGPT and other language models to leverage what they have to try and meet that demand for learners, because there are a lot of students that are not in schools that are very well equipped. And even some of them in those he mentions that in his interview with some teachers, he said many of them wish that even in our worst conditions that we would have, that they would even have that, because they'll take that at any given time. And so my question to you is, I know we see a lot of differences. But for yourself, as far as building curriculum and maybe what you're seeing through school districts, what are some of the challenges that you are currently seeing right now, for AI EDU?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best way to, because there's like lots of different dimensions to the challenges. I'll run through just a couple. So I get, for us, the biggest challenge that we're facing, besides just building capacity to serve all the demand that we have, is keeping up with the advancements, because our curriculum is already, I wouldn't say out of date, but there's a lot of opportunities now to update it, given all the new tools that are being released. And I don't think we've ever had curriculum developers have never had a topic that's this fast moving. And so when you think about what does curriculum look like today to prepare students for what will be available 3 years from now, that's a hard question to answer. And so it really comes down to, are there fundamental conceptual skills that and like knowledge that will apply sort of across the board? And we think topics like AI ethics, will stay the same, like the considerations stay the same. The questions you ask should stay the same. The tools may change, right? And so you may have an evolving perspective on which tools maybe fit within a certain ethical framework. I would say for schools, it's a similar challenge. It's, they're dealing with ChatGPT right now, and there's some obvious challenges around, assessments probably need to shift to some degree, especially if you're doing take-home writing tests that are typed up. There are challenges around even building policies. I've talked to a lot of schools where they've banned ChatGPT, and they're trying to figure out when and how to unban it. And I actually think that districts like, New York Public Schools is a great example. Some districts got some flack for banning ChatGPT, and people were chastising them for, this is very backward, and we need to make sure students have access to these tools. And I would say that sentiment makes sense. Like, we do want students will need to be proficient users of these tools to be successful. However, these tools are really new. And I actually think that it's reasonable for administrators to say, hey, we want to pump the brakes and make sure that we are aware of what we're unlocking, and that we have like the capacity internally to be able to address the issues that may or may not come up, and even understand what are the issues, what are the risks. And so that's, I think that the good news is there are answers to those questions. It's not so much like yes or no, you should or shouldn't ban ChatGPT or other AI tools. It's more like, here are the things that you need to consider. Just like with Google, like you could say, should you ban Google? Well, you might argue that kids could look up all sorts of nefarious things using Google, and without guidance, it could lead to kids going down rabbit holes that lead to bad outcomes. But I don't think anybody says that we should just ban the internet outright or Google outright. And I think we'll probably reach a similar place with AI tools, where there'll need to be recognition and awareness and strategies to address the downside risks. But then at the same time, we do need to embrace giving students the chance to actually learn not just how to use the tools, but how the tools work, how they're being impacted by them, how to think about them. I'll stop there. There's more. There's lots of challenges, but I'll close the final one, and just because you mentioned it, and this is so there's AI education, which is really our focus, which is preparing students for success in a world where AI is everywhere and part of work. And that does include some proficiency of using the tools. There's lots of strategies that are involved. We think project-based learning and really being hands-on and discussion-based projects in the classroom are critical. You can't just give people a remote learning, self-guided platform and expect that to address it entirely. The other sort of area of AI plus education is really tools that support learning, tools that enhance learning. So that's where, let's say, personalized tutoring comes in. And that's probably the most obvious use case for like a language model right now. And there's a lot of companies that are building this and have already built it, Khan Academy being maybe the most recognizable one. So, we're already in a place where schools have the option of unlocking a personalized virtual tutor that can help them bridge homework gaps and address the shortage that we have. I think it's like 300,000 teachers. We have a gap of 300,000 teachers in the US. And so um, big opportunities. And in fact, the students that stand to benefit the most are the students that are actually being left behind, that are the most at risk. But then with that comes some other sort of broader ethical questions about what does it mean to sort of hand over the keys to an automated tool where we know it can make stuff up, it can hallucinate concepts, and especially when tools are new and untested. um, I think that's where we don't have like a strong opinion yet, and I think administrators are going to have to develop this, which is what does the cost benefit analysis look like? Because you probably won't have a tool that's perfect. And at what point do you say, well, we still need to use this because it's so powerful and can help us address these sort of like really sort of urgent learning gaps that we know that our students are facing. So yeah.
Yeah. No, and one of the conversations too that at least I've been having with my colleagues is that, the AI has been within the education space there for a long time. Like many of the programs that we use, and I always go back to certain programs, and my particular story is it happened this year when we got a new math program, and then the students take a pretest, and then based on that pretest, it'll go ahead and create a path, a learning path for them where it'll help them close some gaps once they start, doing a lot better, but it still keeps them at level. We had a call since I worked there in the technology department and helping the teachers get a call, and the teacher's like, I think that this platform doesn't work. I'm not liking it at all whatsoever. She teaches ninth grade algebra, and she's saying, I have students here that it's showing that it's giving them fourth grade skills. And I said, I know, what happens is they never saw a program that would do something like that was prescribing fourth grade skills, because although those students are taking algebra, they still hadn't mastered some of the fourth grade skills that they needed, such as some things with measurement or things of that sort. So I was telling her, like, this is what the program does in this way, where it learns what the student needs, and it'll go ahead and create those paths, still staying where the student is, but helping close that gap that they may have so they can master. And she just really didn't like it. She didn't really buy into it. So, what we're saying now is like, the platforms have these sort of algorithms to help, but now that it's so front facing and just right up here, and the teachers are now seeing it a little bit more, I guess I want to say, in front of them, aside from just the platforms that they never really took into account. My question to you is how does your program or your curriculum help teachers and students just really understand how to the interaction with AI and its potential that it has, for future use?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what you're kind of getting at is one of the big, let's say the bad case scenarios, which is um, in a world where we rely too much on personalized learning, there will be instances where the data coming out of a system is putting a student on a certain pathway, and that results in a less than optimal educational outcome compared to what they would otherwise have if they were not using a personalized learning tool. And that's pretty scary, because the idea that we're gonna sort of allow machines to make decisions and put students on a pathway that can be profoundly impactful in their life, without a human in the loop or without some way to gut check it. I think teachers are right to question it. And actually, what I would say is what you just described really sounds like a very healthy um, a system to have in place, where there is a tool being used, but there's a teacher that's kind of looking at the outputs and saying, this doesn't really check out. But I think this happens in the world today without AI. I mean, I went to a public school in Akron, and I took I forget exactly what it was. It was like a test to get into like a gifted program, and I took all the tests, and I was marked as not gifted, and but I was lucky because I had a teacher who was like, I know Alex didn't score well on the test, but I've seen his work. I really think that he's up for the challenge and that he'd benefit from the challenge. And teachers are making calls like that all the time. Like, like some teachers know that like what students get on standardized tests does not necessarily reflect their abilities. And so, I think any world where AI is being used, let's say where it's prolific, hopefully that world is still a place where teachers have a lot of control over, um, over the opportunities that students have, and the ability to kind of steer students based on their own intuition and deep professional expertise about, um, how and when to challenge students, because that's important as well, as you want to be able to push students. Um, but I don't think that doesn't mean that you can't have tools providing data. It just means, how much are you weighting that data and allowing that data to drive decision making? And again, I think that's where schools need to kind of just come up with their thesis about, how they're going to, like address issues like that.
No, and you're
Another
and
issue, by the way, which I think is really interesting, is so that there's like the AI detectors. So you plug in an essay and it'll tell you what percentage chance it was generated by ChatGPT or another AI tool, a language model. And even I've heard stories from teachers who put essays through the detector and it gave it like 98% chance of being AI generated, and then they later were able to prove that the student did write the essay. And so that again, I think, demonstrates how complex these challenges are going to be. How do you decide what a 5% chance or a 2% chance means if the decision is, do we withdraw honor roll from a student, or do we suspend a student, like, and potentially mark their record, their academic record? There's a story, and there was a subreddit, like the ChatGPT subreddit. Someone was saying that they typed in an essay and it gave 100% chance that it was written by ChatGPT. And this wasn't OpenAI's tool. This was some other tool. But the point is, you know, the detection tools are imperfect, and we're already in this arms race of, the language models are moving fast. The detection tools are hopefully going to keep up, but that's not going to be enough. Like, unfortunately, I don't think there's just like a technology solution. It really comes down to figuring out, how do we build the capacity among teachers to be really knowledgeable users and sort of guides as these tools start to get used more and more in classrooms.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that, especially with Turnitin. I recently tried it out, and some of my essays that were before even Chat GPT and a lot of the AI writers, I said, let me go ahead and do some comparison. And it was still flagging for a certain percentage of AI, even though it was just really written. And it was some of my college work that I'm doing for my master's and doctoral studies. And then, even I had some essays from my students as well. And it was just flagging a small percentage of that. So I think that's where you said, that's where you train the teacher, which, we're going to get into as far as what, AI EDU offers for curriculum. So you can tell us a little bit about it. But like you said, in giving the teachers the knowledge and the understanding, to really know the students, like you said, sometimes they do rely very heavily on that data and they think like, that's it, this is what it says, this is the way it's going to be. I myself, am not really too data driven. It's really like, I know my students, and and personally, when I'm in the classroom, so I know what it is that they can or may just struggle with a little bit, but it doesn't mean they won't be able to do it. You have to take into consideration several variables, but oftentimes at the district level is like, well, this is what the data says. And but the data doesn't account, like, what if that kid had a bad day? What if that kid, who knows what happened that morning? Who knows what happened that midday that made them not do well on that last test? Was it really instruction? Was it another variable that doesn't deal with what's going on in the classrooms? And a lot of times the data won't give you that, but the teacher can, because the teacher is there. They see the students on the day in and day out and know what it is that they're capable of. So I think that's something that's very important to note there. And I like that you mentioned that, you kind of have to, gauge it and see, and then, as a teacher say, okay, this is a decision that I will be making, whether it's like, no, I truly don't believe that this student, put this through an AI writer. I mean, it's definitely something that they really wrote. The other thing too is, oftentimes, like right now, I'm seeing a lot of people on TikTok as well, and professors that are using the tool, and they're like, yes, I just caught this student, I caught this student and did this and so on. But, for a K-12 teacher, I mean, using a tool like this and then flagging every student down, talking to every student and saying, did you do this? Did you not do this? Did you let's rewrite this? Let's work on this. It just seems like it's going to cause a lot more stress. And now because you're just on that, you're on the defense and you want to make sure that everything is legit. And I think that just may cause more stress on top of the curriculum that they have to do, and then of course regular discipline, and now this and so on. So it just seems like it would be adding something else to the plate. But one thing that I did like that you mentioned earlier is that maybe the assessment type needs to change. I know that recently there was on a podcast I was listening to is for university students. It's, are they really looking for the learning? Are they just looking for stamina as far as writing? How is there a different way that a student would be able to show their learning rather than, the typical 150-page dissertation? Why can't it just be a capstone? Why does it always have to be the way that it's always been done and just, write, like the wind, rather than, hey, let's see what we can build. Let's see what we can create and assess their learning on those things. But I mean, again, I'm going back to the K-12 space, changing things around a little bit and making the assessments a little bit different where you actually, can see and create a learning artifact other than writing, a different artifact that the student can create to assess the learning and the mastery of that concept. So that's something that, at least in my eyes, I kind of see. But of course, there's a lot of great educators that are out there that are doing some great things and changing that. But I think sometimes it's like the I gotcha. It just seems like so harsh. It just seems like, okay, like that's it. Like, I mean, what else is that student going to do? I mean, have we done him justice as far as just saying, you know what, I gotcha. That's it. You get your F and so on. And they're done. What else can we do? But again, that's just me. But I just want to also just kind of, change the conversation over. If you can tell us a little bit more about your website, because I'm here, and of course that'll be on the show notes at aiedu.org, and looking here at the teacher aspect of it, and you do have some classroom curricula here. Can you tell us a little bit, describe what it is that we or a teacher would find here if they come visit your website, and maybe just, some simple ways of interacting with the content and presenting the content to students?
Yeah, happy to. So we offer free curricula, and that can be found in the Teach page. And so we have 3 products right now. We have something called AI Snapshots, which are 185-minute like bell ringer warm-ups, 45 each for English, science, math, social studies. And the idea is this is the easiest, dip your toe in the water. You don't want to displace too much class time, but you do want to start connecting whatever it is the subject that you teach with, relevant practical topics in artificial intelligence. AI Snapshots helps you do that. And they're just Google Slides. It's really, there's no sign up required or accounts or, anything like that. It's we wanted to make it as easy as possible for teachers just to start using. There's also something called Introduction to AI. And so that's a 10-week project-based learning course, and it introduces the fundamentals of AI through, engaging, culturally relevant lessons where students effectively are building a recommendation engine on Hugging Face, and in the process, they're learning about, AI ethics, future of work. What is data? What are models? Like, how do these things interrelate? And it was designed as like a quarter long, and so that was intentional because we wanted it to be still flexible enough to plug into an existing course. So maybe you're an introduction to computer science teacher and you're looking for something to amend it so that it has AI built in, or you're a CTE teacher. And then the third product that we actually launched just last month is our project dashboard. And our project dashboard right now has 6 projects. These range from 1 hour or 1.5 hours to 5 hours long. At the moment, we have, let me see if I can remember, it's English, computer science, biology, government and econ at the moment. And we're building a lot more, and we'll be excited to release those in the coming months. The project dashboard is really us leaning into what we found, which is the modular approach to AI education seems to be the most palatable for teachers right now, because it gives them the flexibility to figure out where and when and how to plug these things in, while also providing connectivity to learning outcomes that they're required to teach. And we envision building out that dashboard significantly, because that modular approach also gives us the flexibility to keep pace with all the new tools that are coming out. So it's a lot easier to create a new project for, let's say, a text to video generator, than to totally rewrite, a 10-week course. And then the other thing that you mentioned is, so there's the educator empowerment page, and the most important piece here is our professional development site. So this is so we do a lot of PD. We've trained 1,500 teachers as of the end of last year. I haven't even had the chance to check how many teachers we've trained this year, but we love doing teacher trainings. We go all over the country. We were just in Miami. We're going to be in Ohio, San Diego, and I'm missing a bunch of other stuff that my team will chastise me for later for forgetting. But we do, so we go over the country and host in-person workshops. We also are scheduling a series of virtual hour-long professional development offerings that will be free initially. And this is really, so PD isn't required to use our curriculum. Our curriculum has been designed to work out of the box. However, what we found is that teachers who go through some level of PD, even if that's just an hour long, it's understanding the context, like why is teaching about AI so important? How is AI actually being used? Like, what are language models? What is generative AI? What's the difference between generative AI and all the other stuff that you've probably been hearing about over the last 10 years? It really enhances follow through, because it's very hard to see all the tools and all the capabilities and not leave a presentation with this sense of, holy crap, this is a really big deal. Like, this is going to be affecting people today, let alone 4 years from now. You're a freshman in high school right now. You're 4 years, maybe 8 years away from your first job. It's very hard to imagine that AI isn't going to be a fundamental part of day to day. And so that's sort of like one of the learning outcomes that we have with our PD. But then we also obviously bridge into some baseline conceptual knowledge, and then also really being focused on how do you actually implement our curriculum. And so just walking teachers through some case studies and examples that just give them that working muscle memory and familiarity so that they feel confident delivering curriculum to the classroom.
That's great. I mean, what I love is, just like you said, just the ease of use and the access to it. And I think for a lot of teachers, definitely, if something is just going to be very easy to introduce and to share, and I think that makes it definitely worthwhile. So I really love what you have done here. And it's a great way, like, for students, well, most importantly to teachers, to have access to something that they themselves can take in and learn and understand more. And then, of course, pass that on to students as well through what you have available for the student side as well. And like you said, it's all about preparing them for the future of work, the future of learning. Once they get into college, who knows? And the tech that they're using now is only going to get better. And so we just really want to make sure that the students have an equal opportunity to practice that, be ready, and to be ready for that workforce. So in seeing all of this, Alex, I want to know maybe what is the next step for AI EDU? I know that you have this out. Are you planning to continue to grow this or branch out a little bit more? If you don't mind sharing what the next steps are.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have raised a lot of money in the last couple months from OpenAI and Google and Microsoft and a bunch of other funders. And so we're in build mode. We're building new curriculum, new products, new professional development offerings. We're investing in regional capacity. So many of our funders will say, we want to help you. We want you to build regional capacity in Ohio or in Maryland. So we're looking for more collaborations in other states where we have like really clear demand, Colorado being one of them, Hawaii, California, Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida. There's a long list, actually. So yeah, building, growing our team, and just basically expanding all the different work that we're doing, with an eye towards really building our own technology platform sooner than later, so that we can start measuring student learning outcomes more effectively. What I'd say, like over the next couple months, let alone years, I guess I'd leave people with two things. So one of them is, by the end of this year, you will have to navigate the internet and assume that if you're not reading something from a trusted source, like a publication of some, like a newspaper of some kind, it very well may have been written by artificial intelligence. And the same applies for images. We've already, I mean, you can probably flash some later, but there's lots of images that were trending that are hyper realistic and totally fabricated. So even irrespective of the impact on the future of work, there is a digital readiness, digital citizenship component that is absolutely critical for students, because people who aren't aware of what AI is capable of are going to be far more vulnerable to misinformation, to fraud, to harassment. And so I think, that's one of the immediate imperatives, is like, we need to at least talk about deepfakes. We need to talk about fabricated content, and the ability that the ways that AI can do that. The other thing is, one of the conversations that I've been having over and over again with educators has been, oh, my partner is using this at work, and I've used ChatGPT to write grant proposals. I've used it to write reports. It's pretty common now when you talk to folks. A lot of people are using this day to day. It's already a part of the working world. And this is still very early days, and the tools haven't even really been tailored yet. And so what I think the tough thing for educators, unfortunately, is this is like the internet. And there is no option to say we're going to prevent students from getting access to this, because students that are not proficient users of AI tools, and certainly not educated and informed users of AI tools, will be outcompeted and outperformed by students who have those experiences. And that should be what keeps you up at night if your focus is on getting students ready to be successful when they graduate. The good news is that, unlike computer science and unlike STEM over the past 30 or 40 years, where STEM was kind of this path, it was like a gate that you had to cross, and it was maybe like an advanced, getting into AP computer science or taking a STEM degree in college. The barrier to entry for using AI tools is really, really low. It's just text input. And so you could have an 8th grader using AI. In 2 years, 8th graders are going to be creating live action anime series about George Washington or Thurgood Marshall or whoever it is that they're learning about. And there will be others who are writing book reports about it. And that's really what teachers need to be thinking about, is, it's the front lines of helping society adapt to these tools is going to be in classrooms, because the working world's already going to be moving in that direction. And so that's sort of the call to action, is, there's not necessarily a right answer about when and how and what to implement in classrooms. I don't think anybody should feel comfortable not addressing AI in some way, though, even if that's using just discussions. It doesn't mean using the technology necessarily, but we need students to be aware of this technology revolution, which for them is going to be the generational, once in a generation moment that will define their lives over the next 30 to 40 to 50 years. And so I think that's exciting. And I think that's why, a lot of the conversations we've had have not been driven by fear, but I think they've been aspirational, because while yes, the tools are kind of scary and there are concerns about the future of work, teachers find ChatGPT very useful. You can do a lot, and you can automate a lot of mundane work that actually can professionalize the profession. And so there's opportunities for everybody, and it's just a matter of how do we make sure that there's equitable access to those opportunities, equitable awareness and learning to utilize those, these capabilities, to benefit society and to benefit students.
Absolutely. Like, I agree with everything that you said. I mean, for me, I'm just really excited, about this. And just as the ChatGPT broke out in December, I started my semester of doctoral studies, and it just so happened to be my class in ed tech trends, K through 12. And then I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and write about AI. And even my prof was like, well, there isn't too much out yet. Or I said, let me go for it. And, I just got really excited about everything about it. Like you said, taking care of those menial tasks and really, being able to personalize or enhance our work, our lesson plans, and add another piece or simplify something. And that for teachers to be able to save them time, I can definitely see that. And even for my job, what I do here also with content creation, it's definitely a big plus.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that you mentioned too, though, I did want to add here, because you did mention some of those images too, and just kind of be aware of deep fakes and so on. So this is the one image that I did want to share that was very popular, in the last couple of days on the tweet. Yeah, with the Pope with
Yep.
the puffer
This
jacket,
one
and I mean,
I actually shared this with some friends,
mhm.
and I was like, "Look at this! Is so ridiculous." And I had to actually like do a bit of a mea culpa and be like, "Wow, I myself, this is like literally my space, and I was fooled."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I had to do a double take too as well. I was like, "Whoa, whoa, what's going on?" Because they look so real, and so this is something that's important. And I love the fact that you have taken all of that into account and you set it up in such a way, like I said, that is accessible to teachers everywhere and to students as well, just to get the conversations going, make them aware. And you have activities there that they can do, and also for the teachers, that professional development piece also as well, just to help them understand, see the potential, see, how you can reconcile, because there are some of those cases where, maybe they're in a district where they don't want to open it up because of the data privacy. But then my question is like, is it just because it's Chat GPT, or because are we being consistent with all our programs? Because I know that as education, there are programs out there that should say 13 and above, but I know that they're using them with the littles too as well. So are we being consistent with our policies and so on? So those are some things that even, IT directors, CTOs that are in districts, and all the major stakeholders have to have that conversation and see how will policy change, to make this accessible, maybe not accessible, maybe to certain age levels, something. But I do agree with you that it is something that whether if they don't do it in school, they're going to have it on their phone, or they have it at home too as well. So we really need to teach them, or teach our students and even ourselves, how to use this responsibly as well. So Alex, thank you so much for being here with us this evening here. Nice afternoon for you too as well. I really appreciate everything you shared, and just how just really well versed and just the information that you gave us and you shared with us today was just awesome. I loved the delivery of it, and just really helped me just take it all in. And of course, the work that you're doing through AIEDU, the website, and what you're offering. I'm really excited. I thank you for what you're doing for this space, the education space, and then, bringing this information to the forefront and just helping our teachers and students, because, this is what we're all about. We just want to make sure that we introduce this space to wonderful, innovative people like yourself and your team that are doing these things. So, all the school districts around, and any, listeners that might just, say, hey, this is something that we need, can start just, going to the website and then just kind of taking it from there. So thank you so much for your time. Before we go, Alex, can you please, tell our listeners and our viewers right now, what would be a way that, they can connect with AIEDU aside from the website? Is there maybe any Twitter accounts or social media, or any other way that if somebody would need to just reach out or inquire about anything, can possibly just get a direct line to, maybe somebody on the team that can respond to them immediately?
yeah, I mean, they should email me. I mean, Alex at aiedu.org. We do have sign up sheets on our website for different, whether you're requesting PD or other things, but um, we're actually, by the way, to the address one of the things you talked about, which is setting policies. We're in the process of doing qualitative interviews and focus groups with educators to learn more about like what would you want in a perfect tool, like what would a tool look like that is easy for you to implement. And so if there are administrators or teachers that have ideas there, we'd love to hear from you. And yeah, partners, supporters, if you shoot me an email, if I'm not able to answer your question, I'll definitely get you to the right person. And so yeah, if you want to share that on, you're going to flash on the screen
Yeah.
later, feel free to do that. But Alex at aiedu.org.
Perfect. We'll definitely make sure we put that on the show notes. But thank you so much, Alex. But before we go, I always love to end the show just kind of with the last three questions here for all of our guests. And I know I did send those out, in the show notes. So hopefully you had a chance, or the calendar invite. So hopefully you might have had a little chance to look at them and aren't fully surprised. But if you are fully surprised, then that's great. We'll get a real genuine answer and so on. But I always love to end the show with the following three questions. And this one, normally I always go with the edu kryptonite, which is for our educators, what makes them weak. As we know, Superman, what made him weak was kryptonite. However, for you, what I want to ask is, what is it in the current state of AI that is your current AI kryptonite?
I think it's just awareness and understanding, because things are moving so fast. To be able to talk to educators and to students and to parents and to leaders about what AI education means and why it's important, it really requires understanding the tool's capabilities. And our pitch completely changed, from 6 months ago. And so that's something that keeps me up at night is, what is tomorrow going to look like? And is that arc something that we are actually able to plan for, or at least do our best to be nimble. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, good answer. All right, question number 2: if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Well, this is a good question. I would need more. I would want more time to really think about it, but I think one thing that would be cool is similar to the Shot with iPhone campaign, to do a series of billboards with AI generated stuff, not just images, but like websites, movies, like just things that people create with AI. Just let people see it firsthand, because I think that if you go down the rabbit hole, there's myriad content out there, but otherwise it's kind of like you and your luck, whether something trends on TikTok or you happen upon something on YouTube. And so I think there would be a lot of power in just putting it out there for people who aren't necessarily spending their time online to get a sense of oh wow, this is really capable stuff.
There you go. Great. I love it. It's wonderful because as people drive by, like you said, they get to know what it is and see it. And, I love it. All right. Well, Alex, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your time, everything that you shared. It's been an amazing conversation. And there's definitely, I'll be honest with you, there's so many great sound bites here that I cannot wait to edit and cut this podcast and start sharing and reposting these, because you shared so much great information for our audience members that are out there that maybe will be listening to the show later on or watching it. They'll definitely get a nice little glimpse or preview of what the whole show was about. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For all our audience members, thank you so much, as always, for making My EdTech Life what it is today. Please make sure that you stop by our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 190 episodes with amazing educators, creators, education professionals, edupreneurs, just connecting the world all in the education space. So please make sure you stop by. And also, if you would love to contribute to our mission of connecting educators and creators one show at a time, you can stop by our store there on our website as well, where you can check out our merch. You can get yourself a cap or a shirt. And as you know, all of that goes back into the show so we can continue to bring you some amazing guests. And, like I said, this is what I love. This is what you guys ask for. And I'm just so happy to give you the best each and every single time. So as always, my friends, don't forget, until next time, stay techie.